Hi, everybody, and welcome to the third and final session of our Distance Learning and Technology virtual conference for today. It's been an exciting afternoon. We have three more tomorrow afternoon, so please go into the portal calendar, take a look at what we have to offer, and please register. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow as well. We're so excited to be able to bring you these presenters. The ones today are national presenters, and it's Teresa with Northstar, and I'll introduce her in just a moment. And I want to announce something before we introduce Teresa that I'm happy to share, that Northstar has just been approved as a Texas-approved distance learning curriculum. Yay! We're very excited for that. And with that, let me introduce Teresa. Teresa is the Northstar Partnerships Marketing and New Business Specialist at Literacy Minnesota, an internationally recognized nonprofit leader and driving force behind the latest developments in literacy learning. She's involved in marketing, new business development, strategic planning, and project management of Northstar digital literacy assessment products and projects. She also presents on navigation-related topics and is a member of the Open Door Collective's new membership committee. Prior to her work here, she developed statewide training on navigation related to helping adults stay in school. She taught ESOL and GED classes and works on career pathways. So with that, I want to welcome you, Teresa, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you take over. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I am going to get to my screen here. How are you all doing? I am glad that you're choosing to spend the afternoon hour here with me. So like Deb said, we're going to talk today about Northstar Assessments and Curricula, which is related to digital literacy. She did mention that we are a program of Literacy Minnesota, and she told you something about us. We have been around for almost 50 years, and we have 5 schools here in the Twin Cities area, which is Minneapolis and St. Paul in Minnesota, that do adult basic education, English language learning. We also do digital literacy. We have a computer lab. And then we also do a lot of training for volunteer tutors and for teachers statewide. So if you are looking for information, all of the materials are on our website, and there's curriculum for everything from pre-beginning ELL to GED. 95% of it is free, and it's accessed from teachers from around the United States. And we also do a lot of advocacy for the field. So that's kind of what Literacy Minnesota does in a nutshell. We used to be called Minnesota Literacy Council, so you may know us by that name. We just changed our name in January. So Northstar is a program of Literacy Minnesota, and we are used by sites in 46 states and 7 countries. Most of the countries do have English as their first language, as we are currently only available in English, although we are trying to change that. We're trying to get software that would allow us to translate Northstar into many languages, and so we're actively seeking grants to do that. I should say that Literacy Minnesota is a nonprofit, and although I'll tell you a little bit more about the Northstar pricing in a minute, we still do seek out grants for implementing new pieces of Northstar. So in the United States and in the world, in the United States, there's 24% of adults who don't have basic digital literacy skills. So let's test the chat box here, and some people share with me how does this affect people? If they don't know how to use a computer, or they don't know how to use internet, email, how is that going to affect their lives? Let's see. Limits their job opportunities. Yep. Jobs. What else? Can't do distance learning. Can't help their own kids in school. It makes a lot of things more difficult. That's right. It does kind of limit their whole lives. So they can't do banking online, for example. They can't access their healthcare portal. They can't get information from their child's teacher if it's sent in an email. So thank you all for that. I'll stop the chat on that right now, but you're right. It's huge in how much time savings there can be doing things online. If you think about being able to check your bank account online versus having to drive down to the bank and go into the bank and talk to someone. It also provides access to jobs, as people have said, but not only to being hired for a job, but even to look for a job, because most of job applications are online now. And then in this situation, of course, for remote learning, I'm sure you're seeing a lot of learners who don't have digital literacy skills. And the other side of that is the equipment that they need. So it does affect a lot of people, and it affects them to a great degree. So Northstar was started back in 2008 when we were in another recession. And a local library here in St. Paul was getting a lot of people coming in wanting to kind of up their game on their computer skills, hoping to get jobs. And the library didn't know, they were helping people, but they didn't know really what they should be helping them on. What does it mean to know basic computer skills? What does it mean to know basic email? And they also had no way of, once they taught people, of assessing if the people had learned the information or not. So they came to us and they asked if we would create digital literacy assessments. And that initially they came to our consortium, our consortium of adult basic literacy groups. And we thought that was a great idea. So we gathered together some national experts on digital literacy and had them start writing standards. So exactly what are the skills that you need to know to be proficient at a basic level in Word, for example, or in digital literacy, I'm going to go with internet, internet basics. So we created those standards, and then based on those standards, we created the assessments. And I'll tell you more about the assessments, but there are 12 modules, and so each module would have standards associated with it. We, at the time, were thinking this would be something that was just going to be used in St. Paul. We did put the assessments online, and we found that there was a huge need. There really, even now, is nothing too comparable to what we have in terms of assessments and curricula for basic computer skills, basic digital literacy, as well as the populations they're aimed at. So because we are in adult basic education, when we created the assessments, we tried to make them as accessible to the people that we serve as possible. So they are created to be accessible to intermediate ELL or higher, or to anyone higher level English. I have heard of several teachers who have been able to scaffold it down for their classes, who are even beginning ELL, to use the assessments and the curriculum. So that is awesome. Because we're a nonprofit, we wanted to make this as accessible again to everyone as much as we could. And knowing digital literacy and how quickly things change, we wanted to be able to keep it updated and add new features as we could. So we decided to allow some things for free, and I'll tell you the difference as we go along. And some things are part of a subscription. That's an annual subscription. And the subscription allows us to do that important work of updating and maintaining our system, but we try to make it as affordable as we can. So once we created this for St. Paul and put it online, it quickly went nationwide. Like I said, there wasn't really anything like it. And now we are international. We're getting asked by new countries all the time, if companies in countries or governments, if they can use Northstar, or if we can put it into other languages. So that is very exciting. All right, so let me go on. There was something else I wanted to mention, so Northstar started out with the assessments, and as I said, a lot of people were using them. The kinds of organizations that use Northstar are adult basic education, community colleges, workforce centers, libraries, some companies. So it kind of runs the gamut, but definitely a lot of adult basic education organizations use us. We also have some K-12 12 schools who will use us for, middle school or higher. And as people were giving the assessments, they found them very useful, but then we were getting feedback saying, it's really great to have these assessments. And when people don't pass, we want to be able to teach them these skills, but we don't have the time to create curricula, or we don't have the staff who feel that they're knowledgeable enough to create digital literacy curricula. Many of us are very familiar with computers, but knowing how to use them and teaching those skills are much different. And there's actually a lot of fear in the adult basic education community about teaching digital literacy, just because it's something perhaps many people have not done. So they asked us to create curriculum, and we thought that was a great idea. So we have now, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it, but we have now created curricula for some of the modules that are meant to be taught by a teacher or a tutor, either in person in the past or remotely right now. And as we released that curricula, we got a lot of positive feedback, but we also had some people saying, we work in a computer lab, and we only have one person in the computer lab. They can't sit with every person there. Is there any way you can do some self-directed learning? And again, we thought that was a great idea, and we were able to get the funding. So we have created, in the last 2 months, we released our first module for Northstar online learning, which is computer basics. And again, I'll even show you this. And then next week, we're going to release the internet basics module. And this is something where you can, with a little bit of help, a learner can get on the computer and go through this curriculum by themselves, and with minimal staff help. And then that allows them to learn the skills and prepares them for the assessments. The other thing that Northstar provides is reports for you, so that you can show funders how you're spending their money. You can kind of inform your own instruction. So all these things we'll go through in more detail. I want to quickly say, and then I'll check the chat here. The assessments themselves, and we'll go through this again, but the assessments themselves are all on our website for free. So you can all take all 12 assessments if you want to. If you have the subscription, you will be able to proctor them, which means that people you can capture those results for your site, and you can also award certificates and badges. And I'll cover this again. The classroom curricula, that's only available with the subscription. Northstar Online Learning is typically only available with the subscription, although right now we have the Computer Basics module for free during this pandemic time. And then the reports are only available with a subscription. So I'm going to talk about the assessments, and then I will stop for questions in just a minute. So these are our 12 assessments. They are kind of broken down into these 3 areas. And the nice thing about the assessments are that you as a site don't have to use all 12 if you don't want to. Your learner, each individual learner, can use whatever is applicable to them. So say someone comes into your site and they really just need to learn Excel, they could just take the Excel assessment and see how they're doing. Other people take all 12 assessments. So it's really flexible and up to you and what your learner needs. And there's no particular order that you have to take them in. Of course, I would recommend that someone be able to pass basic computer, internet basics, and email before going on to other ones. But that being said, the rest of the assessments are, the order is pretty interchangeable. And we are also looking to include new assessments. So someone in another webinar asked about the G Suite, and that is something we're getting a lot of questions about. Could we create assessments for that? And we would like to do that. And we're currently, again, seeking funding to do that, which would probably be the next assessments that we would create. As we create assessments, we also new assessments, we would also create new curricula and online learning to go with them. So when someone takes an assessment, they will get this results page. And you can see that this person passed with 98.7%, all of our modules, the passing percentage is 85%. So if you get above 85 or above, you pass, or below, you don't. You can see here what I like is that in the green column, it tells you what are the standards, what are the skills you have passed and mastered. And then in the purple column, it shows you what you need to improve. And on this one, the green column, you can't see all of them because this is only a screenshot, but it's quite a long list. And then the purple column, this person just has one because they only got one wrong. But that lets, if someone hasn't passed, it would let them and you as a teacher know what you need to work on with this particular individual. Or if you're like me and you like to get 100%, you'll know the one thing that you need to practice. You can see here too that if you are a subscription site, it does allow this user to claim a badge. And badges are like an electronic certificate that some organizations, especially the community colleges, I think, often use them to show proficiency in areas and certificates that people have gained. And it's just another way to show what you've done. But you can also get a certificate. And the certificate is a piece of paper. And what is nice about these, well, we initially created them because we thought, hey, this will be great for people who are interviewing for jobs to show to employers. They have a certificate that says, I'm proficient in PowerPoint or Word or whatever it might be. And people have used it that way. I know of someone who came in to the library and wanted to learn Excel because his supervisor said that if he could prove that he had learned Excel, he would get a promotion. So he took a class, he passed the assessment, he got the certificate, he showed it to his manager, and he did get the promotion. So that was very exciting. He was very happy about that. But what we didn't really anticipate, and which is actually huge, is how much the certificates build confidence in the learners. Where I work at a computer lab, I often see people who are, in their upper 50s, lower 60s, who have been working manual labor most of their lives and haven't had to have computer skills for a job, but they've reached a place where they physically can't do what they did before, and so they need to kind of re-skill themselves. But it's been a very long time since they were in school, and many of them didn't have a great schooling experience in the first place. And so they're, and if you have worked with people who don't know anything about computers, they're very scary. People are afraid of breaking them. They don't want to do the wrong thing. So when they pass that first certificate, it is huge. I have had people start crying in joy. I've had people give me high fives. At one of our subscriber sites, a woman, she passed the computer basics certificate, and she took it home and she put it on her refrigerator so she could show her kids what she had done. So it is something that builds a lot of pride and confidence. And it also helps just in general for adult learning. It helps people persist in their learning and with their goal setting too. So they can say, I want to pass this or this module. I want to pass this module. So it helps with even the idea of goal setting. I was talking to one of our sites, which is a prison, and the teachers were working with young men in this case, and they were actually teaching them GED, to pass the GED, and they're having a really hard time with the young men seeing the value of studying, and kind of coincidentally at the same time, they introduced Northstar, and the guys were very confident in their digital skills because they all have, cell phones. And they were surprised when they didn't pass the modules, just because computers are different than cell phones in some ways. But it kind of spurred them on to pass, to prove they could pass. And so they studied and then did pass. And these, if you know anything about the GED, can be a very long-term process, whereas these modules can be passed in, studying for a day, a week, however much time the person puts into it and has, but they're pretty quick, relatively quick. And so they were seeing wins in a short span of time. And this win transferred over, the idea that studying does help transferred over, the teachers saw it transfer over into their GED program. So it was really exciting for the teachers to see that their students really began to see the value of setting goals and studying to meet those goals. And that their certificates are often used as kind of a pathway to future study. So there are several students in a program who started out not knowing anything about computers. They passed all 12 of the modules. They went on then to be able to teach the class at the ABE program. And then they went on to the local community college for a IT program. So we are excited to hear those stories, and I hope that you, should you use Northstar, will have some of those stories as well. So this is one of the people who have passed all of the Northstar certifications, all 12. I don't think he's holding all 12 in that picture. But one thing we found was, initially we were thinking we could just print one certificate and then list the modules that people had passed. And we got a lot of pushback from learners who wanted to, who wanted one for each module. And I have heard of people who have put them up on their wall, framed them and put them up on their wall, people who share them on Facebook. So it's like very meaningful. I see someone has their hand raised. So
I don't see a hand raised. I see a check mark. Somebody was clicking yes on a check mark. I was just curious, since you were talking about certificates, how many of you actually use certificates for anything, or badges? I know that there's a similarity in Northstar badges to what we have here in Texas, the Master Teacher Academy. That we had a few years back. If you participate in all the trainings of the Master Teacher Academy, you get badges for that. So I'm curious, what all do you do, all of you do to give out things like that? Rewards, it looks like. We use paper certificates, but haven't done DL badges yet. It'll start next semester. We use certificates at the Community Action in the Kyle Learning Center. Some folks use certificates. We've had excitement here in Waco with certificates. Margie, today 3 students got recognition certificates for 12, 14, and 28 hours of distance learning on Burlington English. Wow. I'll mail them later. We do have a hand up now, VK8V15. I'm not sure who you are. Do you have a question that you'd like to ask? You can unmute yourself. Cecilia saying she's got perfect attendance certificates that she hands out. We've had excitement here. I don't want to miss anybody. Give out rewards. Eduardo says, yes, we give out certificates. Great. Anybody else?
There's a lot of research on kind of persistence learning in adults and having people feel confident and competent is definitely one of them.
It's kind of a validation, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, VK is not going to ask their question, I don't guess. That you can just click that hand again and it'll lower. Bertha says she uses certificates for attendance and for Burlington hours. And Randy, we pass out certificates to students who get 12 hours of direct time, also for passing a post test. Vivian, we give out certificates and our students love them. So just another validation of the meaning of this when you get with Northstar.
All right. Well, thank you all for your contributions. So what do people use the assessments for? What do sites use the assessments for? Obviously to assess how people are doing, but also to then provide relevant instruction. So it may be that you're testing a class and you find that everyone does pass the computer basics, but they're not passing email, for example. So then you can choose what instruction to give, and we'll look a little bit at the reports later on that show more detailed information on that. Sites have also used it to prepare their teaching staff. So like I said, many people have never taught digital literacy or are digitally literate themselves but don't know how to go about it. So going through some sites make their teachers go through the assessments and pass them before they'll have them teach a class. And this not only ensures that they know the material, but also gives them, kind of a way of how to think about what the students are expected to know. Some companies, we're working with a telecom company right now who inherited a lot of employees who had only been using paper, and the new company goes, is digital. So they're using Northstar to upskill their employees so that they can use the digital systems that the telecom company uses. I also want to say that in this time, I mentioned proctoring a little bit, and that is the assessments are proctored. If you're a subscribing site, you can proctor assessments to prove that that the test was valid, meaning that you check and see who the ID of the person taking the test to make sure it's the person that you think is taking the test. And you also make sure that they're not getting help from somebody else or notes or their phone while they're taking the test. So normally in the past, that was all done in person. Now many of us have in-person opportunity. So we at Northstar have made it quite simple to do remote proctoring using something like Zoom or Skype. Of course, your student has to have a computer or a laptop or a Chromebook at home. Sometimes their kids do. So a lot of times we've had people using their kids' devices to do this. But it's pretty easy. You connect once you have that technology, and you probably will have to teach the student a little bit about how to use the Zoom and like etiquette. But then it's just a matter of you as a proctor watching them through the video, taking the test, and we have made that easy on the Northstar end to kind of assign them an ID, so you can do that, so they can be included in your reports and they can get the certificates from you. I have not done it myself, but my colleagues at our computer lab have been doing a lot of remote proctoring lately, and honestly have found that other than students not having the right equipment, the biggest problem has been that like a time will be set for people to meet, and then maybe the learner won't come at that time. But once they are both, the proctor and the learner are there, things have gone really smoothly. And you can proctor up to 10 people at a time if you have quite a few learners in your class or system. Any questions about assessments?
Nope. I think they're just getting excited about what you're going to show them next.
Okay. Well, so next we're going to talk about curricula. And we currently have 6 units available, which you can see on the screen there. We are developing 3 are in development. Excel should be out by the end of May. Career Search is due by the end of June, and PowerPoint should be sometime this summer. We plan to do all 12, and it's just a process we have a very small staff, so getting that done. But they all look alike, and I'll show you what they look like. And again, as I said, they are all geared toward intermediate ELL or higher. And the curricula is only available through the subscription. So it's not one of the free items that we have on our webpage. So as I said, when we created the assessments, we wrote standards for each module, and the curriculum are aligned with those standards. So the curriculum, the assessments, and the standards are all work together. The curriculum is really nice. So I recently taught before we went remote, I recently taught an intermediate ELL class on internet basics. And I really liked it because it's so interactive. They get a lot of time to practice, and they are asked to practice things over and over again, which actually the learners loved because it made them feel that competency. And it also sparked really great conversations about things that people had been wondering about. Some people said to me, no one has ever taken the time to show me any of this. And another woman said she was working, but she didn't know how to print. And, that wasn't part of the curriculum, but she just asked me, can you show me how to print? And she had been having someone do it for her all these years. And so, I showed her how to print. It didn't take me much time. And it was like I had given her gold. I mean, it was so powerful when she showed me the first thing she printed on her own, when she didn't have to ask her colleagues to do it for her. It meant it was huge. So the learners I found to be really, really engaged. In fact, one woman, we had classes over a series of weeks, and the holidays fell in the middle of that. And when we came back from the holidays, we're in Minnesota. She had gone to Florida to see her family. And so the people that I was working with, they actually worked in, or they actually lived in subsidized housing. And she was working as a custodian. So she didn't have a ton of money, but she came back. She flew back the day of the class at 1 a.m. and the class was at 6 p.m. And she said, "Oh, I'm so tired." And I said, "Well, I'm so glad you came, even though I know you're tired." And she said, "Well, I could have flown back tomorrow and the price of the ticket would have been half of what I paid, but I didn't want to miss this class." And that was just like, touched my heart that it meant so much to her to be here. That meant that much. The nice thing too about this curriculum is that the lessons stand alone. So let's say you don't have a digital literacy class. Let's say you have an ELL class or ABE class, but you want to incorporate some digital literacy in your class. You could have a unit on kind of etiquette, and you could include phone etiquette. You could pull from the email section the email etiquette. You could also include safety, like how to avoid phishing scams, how to be safe on the internet. So you could kind of pick and choose from the curriculum what best suited your class and your classroom needs. And it also may be that your students are very proficient in browsers, but they don't know about internet safety, for example, or how to fill out a form online. So you could just use those pieces of the lessons that your particular students needed. So each unit or module, which correspond to the assessment modules, is about 6 to 8 lessons. And we say that each lesson takes about 2 hours. Now, when I was teaching my class, it was a smaller class. I would say on average, it took us an hour and a half to go through a lesson. We do in the computer lab, where we have one-on-one tutors, we are able to kind of use those lessons as well, just by a lot of times the tutor will use the worksheets that are in the lesson, or just having gone through reading the lesson themselves, the tutors know of a way to talk about things that is more easily accessible and helps explain the skills to someone who has not experienced computers much before. So the tutors have found that very helpful for one-on-one instruction. As we are in this time when we can't be together in a classroom for most of us, we wanted to help teachers by looking at how could we use the curriculum to teach remotely. So we now have an instructional guide that is available. Once, if you are a subscriber, you would have an admin portal and it would be available through that.
That's wonderful. I was just going to ask you if they were going to be able to have access to that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yes.
Good.
And we're kind of continually updating it as we learn more.
Mm-hmm.
So we are working in our computer lab with having remote classes.
Okay.
And as we kind of learn from that and from other organizations, we incorporate that into the instructional guide. I used it myself, and it was about, so I was doing a webinar for about 130 people. And I did a portion of the Internet Basics lesson plan as if many of them were teachers, some were volunteers, but as if they did not know, as if they were actual learners. And it went really well, and we got good feedback. So for me as a teacher, I found it really easy to use.
And the instructional guide, someone's asking on how to teach remotely, that's with the subscription?
Yes.
Or with the free? Okay.
And
you're going to go over both of those? We got about 15, 20 minutes left. Okay.
Yep. All right. So each lesson looks the same. And this is kind of what they all include. All of them include. The important thing to note here is that again, the teacher kind of models what happens, and then the class does it together, and then the learners have to do it themselves while in class. Each lesson also includes vocabulary, digital literacy vocabulary, because not only do the learners maybe not know it, but oftentimes as a teacher, you don't know exactly what things are called. So it actually helps you as a teacher. So this is what an example of what the first page of a lesson would look like. And again, they all look the same. And you can see that it tells you what standards are taught in this lesson. It tells you what vocabulary you would teach in this lesson and what learners would learn. It tells you kind of what the objectives of this lesson are. And then the teaching tips will tell you things that maybe you hadn't thought of. For example, on this one, it's saying that on some browsers, it's called a private window. On some, it's called an incognito window. So just helpful for you as a teacher to know. And then on the bottom, it will show you what handouts, if you're in a brick and mortar class, you need to print out, what you need to project. If you're online, what you need to make accessible, screen share with your learners. So I'm going to go on to the online learning, and if you have questions, I think I'll take them at the end, just to make sure we get through this for everyone, if that's all right.
Yep.
So the online learning, I'm going to show you what it looks like. So I'm going to click on this, and you will hear a woman's voice speaking. So I won't talk until she's done. Just be a second.
If you look closely at the outside of a computer, you will see buttons and many small holes. These holes are usually called ports. Each port has a specific shape for different uses and different types of plugs.
So you can see that this is just a little part of the online learning. And you can see that it has the words written there. It has the audio, and she speaks slowly and clearly. The learner can replay the audio as many times as they want to. We try to have a picture that's fairly easy to see. So this is kind of the instructional part of it. And as you go throughout the learning module, there'll be a little bit of instruction and then a little bit of practice. So if we click on next, this will be an example of a practice.
Here is a flash drive that you can plug into a computer. Click on the port that matches it.
So then the learner has to choose which port matches this flash drive. So if I choose this, it tells me I got it right. If I had picked something else, it would say, this is a X and the USB port is what you're looking for. And then the other thing I like is that it gives you the little green check mark if you get it right.
Here are some earbuds you can plug into a computer. Click on the port that matches them.
So we're not obviously going to go through this whole thing, but what's nice about this online learning is it's broken into sections. So for each section, at the end of the section, the learner will have a little quiz. And if they pass the quiz, it tells them they're ready to go on to the next part of the learning. If they don't, it directs them to study it again. And then the same thing at the end of the entire module. They get a little quiz, and it will say, you're ready to take the assessment, or go back and practice these things. So that kind of lets you as a teacher and also your student know what they need to work on or when they're ready. The other nice thing about the Northstar Online Learning, and so again, to remind you, Northstar Online Learning comes with the subscription, and all that I'm talking about here, typically only with the subscription. But right now, during the pandemic, we are making that basic computer online learning available to everyone on our website. So you can go right after this and go try it out yourself and see what it's like, and if it would fit your learners' needs. The other part that comes with the online learning is a learner management system, and I'll show you what that looks like. So here you can see that all the modules that we have assessments for are on the page for this learner. Although we only have the online learning for the basic computer skills now, next week, internet will be available, and then ultimately all of them. If you look over here, this dark blue, it would be a circle had the person taken the assessment. It would show what percentage they had gotten right. Here, there's the practice mastery. So it shows you how far they've gotten in the modules. So This way the learner can look and you as a teacher can look and see, you know, what they've accomplished. So as a teacher, you might give a goal of, I want you to get to, you know, 50% by the end of the day or whatever it might be. Also, if you are like many ABE programs, you'll see people who come in, especially the computer labs, they'll come in maybe for a week and then they'll be gone for maybe a month and then they'll come back. This allows them to log in again and see, oh yeah, that's right, I did these two and I was working on email, for example. So it's a great way for learners to kind of have a roadmap of what they've done. If we clicked on details here, it gives us that same information, but it also tells us what skills they've worked on already in the lesson. So the green check tells you what has been done. And then if there's no check, or if there's a red X, it means I need to work on it some more. If there's nothing, it means I haven't done it. Let's say I completed this whole online learning and I was going to take the assessment, but I was like, you know, I don't remember how to identify and locate the camera and the mic. I could just click here and go back into the online learning and it would take me right to that section of the online learning. So I don't have to do the entire thing again, which I find really useful and time saving.
While she's changing her screen, I put the link to that basic computer skills in the chat pod for you.
So the other nice thing about this is initially when we created the online learning, you had to sign up each individually. And now, especially with people switching huge groups of people to remote learning, we have allowed for bulk creation of learner accounts. So you can just upload a spreadsheet and then it will populate all the learners' names that you have on your spreadsheet. I said that basic computer module is available now. Internet basics will be released next week, probably on Monday. And then career search module will be done by the end of June. And then, as I said, we're ongoingly working on the rest of them. So the other thing that you get if you get a subscription is you would have your own admin portal. And you could create as many administrators for that as you want. And you can change them, add, delete, and proctors. So proctors are the people who can actually give the assessments. And the proctor training is quite easy. It's about maybe a 15-minute video that you watch, and it basically says, you know, that you have to check people's ID, you have to make sure that they're not being helped by anyone or anything. Read them the code of conduct. It's fairly easy. Once you have watched that video, then you are awarded proctor status. And again, you can have as many proctors as you want. You can update your own site information like websites, phone numbers. You can run your own reports, which is really nice. You don't have to ask us to do any of this stuff. You can do it yourself. But we do have an online help desk, and I just checked, and we consistently have 96% satisfaction rate with the help desk. So people will, you know, say, oh, I forgot my password, or it might be, how do I do this? And people also even write in with suggestions on how we can make the product even better. And we obviously have listened to a lot of those, and we welcome those. You also get reports. And
Hey,
I want
Teresa,
to
could you speak up a little bit, please? I
I'm
think
sorry.
some folks are saying, yeah, they just need to speak up a little bit. And we got about 8 minutes.
Okay. We're just going to look at a few reports, and then we can take questions.
Show them to the website and the.
Yep.
Perfect.
So if you're a subscriber, you have access to these reports. And so you can see that this report, it's great for, again, showing your funders what you're doing and also helping to inform your own instruction. So this one will show you, you know, how many people took each type of assessment. And you can see that, you know, in this particular site, a lot of people are taking Windows and Internet. So you might say to yourself, hey, maybe we should have classes on those since so many people are interested in that. And PowerPoint, not that many, so maybe that's more of a one-on-one tutoring kind of thing. It will also tell you the percentage of assessments that have been passed. And I like to look at this because it tells me, one, people are doing great on career search skills in this organization, this pretend organization. So that might mean that that class is being taught really well. People are really understanding it. You can see your digital footprint. Well, one, it's a very hard assessment. But two, maybe that's something that the teaching staff can work together to create something that's more understandable or that can help people learn those skills better. So I kind of like that from, a teaching perspective. You can also look at each module on its own. So if we look at basic computer skills here, we see that 1740 have been given. We can see how many have passed at the percentage. If we want to delve into it deeper, we can see how long on average it's taking to take the assessment, which can help you with your own planning. And then we can see what questions people are having trouble with. So you can see that number 13 is causing, a lot of people are not getting it right. And you might say, well, Teresa, I don't remember what number 13 is. You can go down here and you'll see it's open hyperlink. And then if you click, you can actually see the actual question on the assessment. So, not that you would teach to the test, but you can, say, oh, we need to practice this more. People aren't understanding it. Maybe there's something about the question that's confusing people. Maybe we're forgetting to teach it, or we're not teaching it in a way that they're remembering it. But it kind of helps you improve your class, your instruction. The other thing that you can look at is the individual report, and that will let you show, again, similar to the Northstar Online, it will show you what people have done, but it shows you, if they've passed, how many times they've taken a certain module. If we go into the module, we can see what their score was, how long it took them. But let's say this person hadn't passed this. We can see what standards they still need to work on. And it will even go again to the direct question on the assessment that they're having trouble with. So that can help you in a one-on-one tutoring situation where you're not having to teach everything, but just those things that they're having a difficult time understanding. So I talked about the free versus the subscription. So I want to kind of lay that out in a chart for you. So the assessments for free, you can take all 12 modules. There's no record of achievement. So you could pass it, you would know it, but no one else would unless you took a screenshot, and it wouldn't be considered a valid certificate. If you get the subscription, you get all 12 models, the certificates and badges, the remote proctoring on how to do that, and you can see the individual reports and learner management system. The curricula is only, our curriculum developed by Northstar is only through a subscription. We do on our website have links to websites that other people have created that are free, that kind of align with our modules. So that is a nice feature.
Hey, Teresa, do you think you could increase your page, maybe make it a little bit bigger?
I can try.
I think folks are, whoop.
Yeah, it is small. Unfortunately, it's not in the PowerPoint mode.
Well, you guys, you could do a full screen mode if you wanted.
Hey, Deb, it's Laura.
Hey, Laura.
At the top, they might be able to have a view options zoom ratio, and they can make it bigger or smaller.
Yep, thank you. That works.
Okay, does that help?
Yep.
Patty Thomas, do you want my screen? I got a note that Patty Thomas wants my control of my screen.
Oh, sorry. No, we don't want to do that, Patty Thomas.
Okay, declining. So then with the Northstar Online Learning, it's hard to read the words, but that's the orange here. Again, that's usually with a subscription. Right now it is free online, but you can't save your progress. So if you only did part of it, when you came back, you'd be at the beginning again. And then reports are only with a subscription. I will talk a little bit about pricing because I know people often have that question. So pricing is based on how many sites you have and how many assessments you think you're going to be giving. So typically, if you're just a nonprofit, just have a single site, a school, it would be $500 a year. And that includes up to 3,500 assessments. And then if you're giving more than that, which most organizations are not, it would be just $30 extra for an additional 1,000 assessments. If you are bigger, like a like a junior college or library system, you have multiple sites, up to 6 to 8, we say $1,200 a year. And again, that same limit on assessments. And if you're a much bigger organization, then we'll talk to you about custom pricing. Many people ask me if there's a seat limit. There is no seat limit. So you can have as many learners as you want to. the and you can have as many proctors and as many administrators as you want to.
Now, there's a question with Ashley. Do you offer a trial so they can try it out? I mean, you could try out the just the free assessments, right?
That's right.
Teresa?
You can try out the free assessments right now. You can try out the Northstar online learning. So what some sites are doing is they're actually having their students, if they can. Now it's difficult if people don't know basic computers to get them to the Northstar online learning. But sometimes they'll have the teachers look at the Northstar online learning to see if it seems applicable to, something that they're doing.
And just to let y'all know, I know some of you are having to go ahead and get off because it's 4 o'clock. I did put the website in the chat pod because there are some free things. And I'll put Teresa's contact information in the pod as well. But I just want to confirm. So if you work at, let's say Ashley was the last person to ask a question. If you worked at Literacy Council of Tyler at their office, they would pay $500 and everybody at Literacy Council of Tyler at that office could have access. Is that correct? All the teachers. Okay.
That's right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't do I have had the question like, can I get an individual subscription? And typically it's a site, it's a school or a library or.
Right. I feel bad for cutting you off, but does anybody have any questions for Teresa? I put her email address in the chat pod for any of you.
You can see it on the
Will you
screen.
cut off at the 3,500 is a question.
No, you're not cut off. It's just that if you go beyond 3,500 assessments, you pay $30 up until the next 1,000 and then $30,
And then for Community Action, who has a number of spoke sites, they would pay the $1,200.
Most likely. If you have any questions, though, you can go to our website and it says become a subscriber and you can just ask the question before agreeing to do anything. Yeah.
Great. I appreciate you staying on with this, Teresa. Thank you so much.